The Cavaliers have been rolling since the trade deadline with some big moves. We discussed if they are really NBA Eastern Conference contenders. We discuss that next on Beyond the Locker Room. The Cavaliers have been rolling since the trade deadline with some big moves. We discuss if they are really NBA Eastern Conference contenders. We discuss that next on Beyond the Locker Room. The Cavaliers made some very aggressive moves at the deadline and just prior to it, with some ways that improved their bench, and of course the big move of trading for James Harden and moving off of Darius Garland. It was really something that I don't think a lot of people saw coming. I think Garland was obviously out there for trade rumors, but I don't think Harden was what we thought would be what was coming back. But since then, and even prior to, they were starting to get together, but they have really taken off in the last 7 games. They're 6-1, lost in this case just now to the Oklahoma City Thunder on Sunday. But overall, they've been playing great, and they've moved their way up from being the 7th spot in the play-in just about a week or two ago, all the way up now to the 3 seed, I think, as of today. So they have really been rolling. 3 seed, maybe the 4 seed. They've been jostling with New York. But it's been a great time if you're a Cavaliers fan, to see them kind of being back in the mix. So let's get into why, at least my thoughts on how, why they've made this move, or at least why they've improved so much. And if they are contenders to really be serious contenders to consider. So first thing is, offensive efficiency is up big since the deadline. The Cavaliers look much better offensively, and that's not a surprise. I think one of the things that people forget were Harden, as much as Harden's off court and his demeanor at times when it comes to playing for self, and of course some of his playoff letdowns. What Harden can do is, Harden not only is a great offensive player, but he also has a way of actually making your offense much more functional very quickly. So, I mean, Cleveland ranks near the top of the league in offensive rating over the last 10 to 15 games, especially since adding the Harden, Schroeder, and Ellis. The Harden-Allen pairing has been really effective. They posted a rating around 133 when both are on the floor. So they've really found, which is like a net rating near plus 14 in those minutes. So they've really found a way to kind of, maximize Jared Allen. Harden, of course, with his pick and roll and his ability to throw up the lob pass, makes things a lot easier, and he provides so much spacing from that standpoint. And his shot creation, it's Harden, so his ability to pull up from three, from three, get in the lane, the teardroppers, the ability to draw fouls, catch and shoots, all those things, and of course his outstanding passing ability. He just makes players better and just creates a lot more space for the team overall. So just to keep that in mind, prior to the OKC, actually I don't think so. I think this might be right now actually, but he's about 21 points a game, almost 10 assists per 36 minutes in limited games so far. So it already shows, you're looking at pretty much 21 and 10. And I suspect in a lot of ways he'll get more aggressive on the offense as time goes on. So another thing is the better ball movement that you're seeing now, much more balanced scoring. So before the trade, Cleveland's offense leaned heavily on ISO, or Garland initiated sets. And since the deadline, Harden's ability to kind of create gravity, his ability to kind of have his vision in this case coming out of pick and roll, and getting into the lane, he's able to look for bigs like Mobley and Allen, and his and Allen especially, his efficiency starting to rise, as I mentioned in the previous point, and that's no small part to the Harden's facilitation. Now players like Merrill, Schroeder, Tyson, and they're offering more spacing and giving some type of secondary scoring punch, especially for that bench units. So it helps avoid any sort of stagnation, these lows that Cleveland was getting into, whereas Mitchell sits and then it's what do we do? And so it really does reduce the scoring droughts. That's going to be huge in playoff time. Just the other day against the Nets, they had 7 different Cavs that scored in double digits. And, that's one of the things. And what you're seeing, too, is even in the OKC game today, even with the loss, you saw that Mitchell wasn't ball dominant as ball heavy. And we might get into more of that later on. But it does help him, and preserve him a bit more. Defensive ratings. So the third thing is defensive ratings have stabilized. So Cleveland's defense wasn't elite before the deadline. I mean, as as a Raptor fan, and as a Piston fan as well too, as a Raptor fan, I mean, I watched some of those Cleveland games, and Cleveland's defense was atrocious at times. So it's been a major weakness throughout the season. Without Garland, the Cavaliers still posted a defensive rating around 119 to 125 against quality opponents, but which is decent enough. But Harden's speed and shot contest ability, along with his quick hands, he can help in the pick and roll situations, and that's one thing will help defensively. You don't think of that with Harden. He's also a good guy that if you have him in switches now, unlike before, if you got switched with Garland, who is pretty much going to be a mouse in the house, no chance with a big in the post. Even now, if you switch and you have Harden in the post, for example, Harden's always been a much more underrated post defender than people give him credit for. So that should help them a lot, especially when there's a lot of matchup play that happens in the postseason. So watch for that. Fourth thing, chemistry and lineup fit growing, and that's kind of growing really rapidly. So Harden's found, not surprising to me, but a productive rhythm with Mitchell and Allen, and it's kind of the foundation of forming this stable offensive core. Now, also too, you'll see that in crunch time, the starters' minutes are a lot easier now because they don't have to play them as much. Also, Harden with those secondary lineups with Schroeder out there as well too have stabilized that, as I mentioned, the droughts, and it also now gives the starters that more rest to finish and close games better. Number 5, net rating spike since deadline. So right now, fan compiled net rating snapshot across the league. Looked at the most recent analytics trends. Cavaliers show a major uptick in net rating over the past stretch, ranking among the most improved teams league-wide since early February. Now, fair enough, that might be the case. I mean, they were, as I said before, they're starting to play pretty well just before the break. I think they're starting to figure out a little bit, even though they were still in the 7th spot, but that 7th spot obviously was just due to the fact that the record was similar to some of the other records that we're talking, like Philadelphia and so on. That all it took was a couple of games for them to kind of get out of the 7th spot. So they weren't too far from the top 6. Let's put it that way. But I do think that's a good sign as their net rating gets better and better, that they should be a team that should be on the rise as they enter the postseason. So quick summary of what what I think is leading up to the 6-1 record. More effective offense, as I mentioned before. Harden elevating teammates and a lot of those secondary scorers to make life easier for them and giving them cleaner looks. Balanced scoring, so Mitchell now his legs aren't as tired. And he now has another guy that can actually draw double teams, and he can play more off the ball when necessary. Defensive holding up decently. As I said before, Ellis as well as Schroeder, I think, helped with that as well too on the perimeter. No disrespect to Garland, but he could be a bit of a liability on defense on the perimeter due to his size that causes issues, be it from switches or mismatches, or just not strong enough to deal with bigger guards. And then also, as I mentioned before, closers finding ways to finish games. The chemistry starting to come together very quickly, which is an underrated part of Harden's game. I mean, people think of Harden, there's a selfish element to it that we all think of Harden. However, he has found a way to really, complement all sorts of different types of teammates over the years. So be it Durant, Westbrook, Durant, Irving, Embiid, and company in Philadelphia, Houston, of course. He was the main cog, but he played with a lot of different guys there with Dwight Howard and so on. He's found ways in this case, in all those circumstances, to actually improve the play around guys around him. So from that perspective, I think, and here he is in Cleveland, of course the Clippers, I can't forget. He was fantastic there as well too. So it will be fascinating to see how this plays out. But, their odds will go up, from a championship standpoint. No doubt about that. But I think the one name I haven't mentioned, and I think he's still the key. You notice who I didn't mention his name in all this discussion. And that there is Evan Mobley. I've said it in a basketball rewind, perhaps. I've had the discussions offline with the fellas. I've said, in my mindset, Evan Mobley is the key. He's always been the key. And until he's unlocked, and I'm not sure that's going to happen. I mean, but if they can unlock him, then they go to another level. Because if you get drafted third overall in the draft, you're considered to be a franchise player. You win DPOY. You made an all-star team last year. You know, I'm not expecting that for progress to happen linear, but there should be something I see more of. And too many times I watch Cleveland, especially this year, I barely hear his name get called. He had a big matchup today with Chet, and for the first quarter and change, he was nowhere to be found. The offense looked absolutely putrid. I will give him credit. He started, he played with more force in the second half, but that's the thing. It's always waning with Mobley, and I think in some ways, in my mind, the trade for Harden in some ways is an indictment on Mobley, because they just realized they just need another guy to help Mitchell out, and realize that Mobley may not be that guy now, or they might be saying maybe Mobley may not never be that guy. I don't know. But Cleveland's putting all the chips in right now. It's a pretty expensive team, and they are going all in. They can't wait when Mitchell's prime right now is right now. They can't wait around for Evan Mobley to figure it out offensively and kind of put his imprint on the game a lot more than he does currently. So to me, he is the key. If he can kind of expand his game in the next 20 so games and move to that next level slowly, and maybe Harden can help unlock that, then we may have something here. If not, then I think Cleveland might have to start thinking of some ways to move off him as soon as possible, because I don't think you want to have a guy that makes that much money, and he's a guy giving you 17, 18 points a game, but not actually impacting the game in any sort of way. Like, you don't have to be a 25-point per game scorer to impact the game, but there's too many times where he's gone for like swaths of the game and you don't hear him involved at all. So those are some key moments I'm thinking there. I'll leave it there from that perspective. A locker room take. This one's going to go across the pond. Nothing to do with basketball, actually. This one here is to do with the Canadian hockey team. Let's put it that way. National hockey team. They lost to the United States 2-1 for the gold medal game, just as the women did, a few days earlier. I'll say this much. When it comes to the Canadian hockey team, you listen, man. You gotta put the bread in the basket, man. You gotta score goals, man. And it's like both teams were very similar in the beats they took, which I found fascinating. From the round robin phase, the gold medal to the medal round phase, they're very impressive in the first part of it, the round robin, both sides, and then when we got to the round robin, or should I say the medal phase, things got tight. They escaped a couple times on both sides of the draw, for the women's draw and the men's draw, and then we get the same country for the finals. Essentially, it kind of ended up the same way, where you could make the argument that Canada for both teams outplayed the Americans, but when push came to shove, they couldn't get it done, both losing in overtime. I think the two things that jumped out at me was speed. That's the first thing. And I'm not saying that Canada's team's slow. I mean, I think the Canadian women's team obviously is aging to some extent. That is an issue for them, so they're going to replenish that talent a lot quicker than maybe they thought. On the men's side, it's partially that, but I don't know if it's a philosophy or not, but it's something that's always kind of just troubled me with Canadian hockey on that front, where it's like we look at skill almost like it's like a dirty word. It's like everyone's like, oh, we got to do the forechecking, and we got to do this, and we got to do all that and be physical. No two ways about that. But international hockey is a bit different, man. Skill matters a lot. Speed matters a lot. And it's not even the skill, it's the speed is the element of it that I found at times wanting on certain parts of both teams. And I think that's the difference between the two teams, because once you got the 3-on-3, that's where you saw it come back to really haunt Canada. Whereas that breakaway speed, the ability to make plays out of nothing, and turn things into 2-on-1s in a hurry. I don't know if this means it has to have some type of we got to have some type of review, because sometimes when Canada loses gold, also everybody wants to do a review. It's like, chill out, guys. But I do think they have to really consider the mindset of how they pick these teams in the future. There's a couple guys that got left off the men's team that I questioned, but I'm not going to be playing Monday morning quarterback now. It is what it is. But we'll see. Good job. I would say this overall, expanding not just the hockey, but overall, good job by Canada overall. I had them at 22 medals. They ended up with 21. I think this is another good solid outing by them from an Olympics perspective. Hopefully building momentum for Los Angeles in 2028. But I think, I will say this. I think there's some meat left in the bones. Let's put it that way. I think some events early on in the Olympics that we used to be pretty good at, like figure skating, curling, those sports, I think we got to kind of take a second look on what we're doing to improve our chances to kind of come home and at least be on the podium a lot more often than we are in those particular sports. Because I think if we do that and what we're doing with the other sports, we'll be all right in this case, maybe pushing towards 30 medals, maybe perhaps by the time we get to 2030, in the Alps, in the French Alps. So we'll see. But overall, congratulations to Team Canada overall. Good job. Good job. And once again, you can always find me right here, on YouTube. You can find me, like, comment, share, subscribe. Guys, I appreciate the support. I know a lot of you guys are watching, but hey, man, it's for free, man. You can subscribe. You always can find me also on X, Facebook, Blue Sky, and Instagram. You're ready to keep up on some stuff in there. We just started to launch that Instagram page about a month ago. It's going well, and thanks for the support there. And as always, man, you know where to find me, weekly on Basketball Rewind with the fellas. So I'll leave it there. Keep it locked, and we'll talk next time. Peace.